Welcome back to Going Walkabout. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video on how to leave the United States in 5 steps, and you can view that over here. I also mentioned 5 places that we would consider moving to. Those places included England, France, Italy, Spain, and Mexico. And to date, we've had over 113,000 views and over 1,955 comments. In this video, I want to address a lot of the things that people were inquiring about if you were to relocate to any of these 5 places. I actually was able to do a survey to get more in-depth information as to what people were really looking for in wanting more information about these different countries. In the survey, I said, what is the main thing you are most concerned with in moving to another country? And currently, the people that have responded have said number 1 is affordability, number 2 is safety, number 3 would be hospitals and healthcare, and then number 4 would be the government situation and the relationship to the United States. So I'm going to attempt to go over each of these countries that I mentioned through the filter of these concerns that people had. I just want to do a disclaimer up front. These are my opinions. My hope is that hearing a different point of view is going to maybe help you make a decision if in fact you do want to relocate outside of the United States. And before I start, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Susan Steele, and with my husband of 40 years, Carl Steele, we sold everything 3 years ago and have been traveling constantly for 3 years. We've made a ton of videos on each of the places that I'm going to be talking about today, so please go to my channel, which is called Going Walkabout, if you'd like to view some more in-depth videos, and that'll give you more information on these places as well. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we get started is the immigration issue, which is a worldwide problem, and very much so in European countries. Due to all the wars in the Middle East, Europe has taken the brunt of the immigrants that have left that area. And this has not only stressed their systems, but also stressed their people as well. It means that when you put paperwork in now for immigration, it's going to take longer. 10 years ago, immigration paperwork could be passed through relatively easily. That is not the case anymore. The other thing that I wanted to make a disclaimer about is that each of these countries will have very different rules as to how you get visas, long-term stays, things of that nature. And those rules are changing pretty quickly all the time. So please do your own research on those, because I won't be addressing that type of information in this video today. The second thing to be aware of is the global inflation. Due to the COVID pandemic, literally there is inflation worldwide. I know in America we're feeling the brunt of it, but it is literally everywhere else. And it's important for you to kind of realize that. We visited over 20 countries in the last 3 years, and we saw consistently in all those countries inflation. I actually did a video, and it's over here, on that, and it explains a lot of what we saw, which is not great news, because if you're looking to have geo arbitrage, you know, where you've earned money in the United States and you're going to spend it in a place where it goes further, that's actually harder and harder to get away with these days. But by all means, have a look at this video, and that'll give you some more information on that particular subject as well. So I'm going to jump right in to number 5, and then we'll go up to our top place, our number 1 place. So at number 5, we chose Barcelona, Spain. And I'm going to use the same methodology in each of the countries, hopefully consistently, so that you can get exactly the same information about each of the countries. But you all asked about affordability. So I came up with what I thought was a good affordability meter, and that is eggs. So I did the eggometer, which you're going to see here on the screen. And with the eggometer, you'll see that in Spain, a dozen eggs is about 20 cents less than what we would have in the United States, pay for in the United States. What that means is that groceries are about 10% less, and that is very consistent with what we found whenever we needed to go shopping in Spain. That it's a little cheaper, not a lot. What is less affordable is definitely accommodation. Spain has huge influxes of tourism, and a lot of people have set up Airbnbs and things like that. So it is not that easy to get accommodation if you're in a city like Barcelona, for instance. If you move out to the countryside, there's definitely going to be more choice, albeit that might take a little bit more effort in finding accommodation that will fit into your price range and wheelhouse. As far as healthcare goes, which was the second thing people were concerned with, the healthcare in Spain is socialized medicine, as it is in many European countries. It's almost free for people that live there. If you're traveling there, you would pay out of pocket, and most of the pricing is going to be very fair. They have about 776 hospitals in the country, and in Barcelona, they have like 58 hospitals. So they have a very good network of hospitals, doctors, very well educated. Third thing people asked about was safety. And if you look at the world countries, Spain actually comes in 29th as far as one of the safest countries in the world. I will tell you that America comes in 70th. So the list that I'm showing you here, America's not even on it because they come in 70th. So that kind of gives you a really good idea of how a lot of these European countries, because they don't have guns, are very safe. They also have a fantastic police force. And what I have found about the police in Spain, as well as many other places in Europe, is that they're proactive as opposed to being reactive. And because of that, we personally have not seen any evidence of violence at all in all the times that we've spent. Many of you asked about government, and Spain is part of the EU and as such has a very friendly relationship with the United States. They have a constitutional monarchy, which is similar to England. And so they are a democratic country. Their politicians get voted into office by their people, and their people are very proud to have a say in that process. So overall, we have found the people to be cordial but friendly. They definitely embrace you if you try to speak Spanish, so it's very much worth trying to have a few of those phrases and so forth in your back pocket. They're very proud and independent people, and as long as you respect their way of life, I think you'll find Spain a really enchanting place to live. At number 4, we have Sardinia, Italy, and you can see on the egometer that Italy is up about 20 cents over the US. And this is consistent with what we experienced with grocery shopping for all goods when we would go grocery shopping in Italy. It's not the cheapest place. Although I will say, wine is cheaper there. You can get an amazing bottle of red wine for under $10. So that's kind of a big plus, especially for me. As far as affordability, accommodation is not super cheap. If you go off season like we did, and by all means have a look at our video on Sardinia, you'll see that you can actually save a lot of money. I'm pretty sure that you can do long-term leases again that would be a lot less expensive as well. And Italy has been doing a lot of really interesting programs. One of the biggest things they're doing to get people to migrate into the country is to offer homes for $1. And this is all over Italy, but mostly in the small towns. So you need to research this carefully because a small town in Italy is not a super vibrant place. And that's why the kids have moved out to the larger cities in the country. And that's why they're trying to get people to move into these homes. And, you know, I'll post some different headlines that you can see here. People that have moved and have renovated these homes, I would say you need to be of a nature that you're okay with renovation, number one, and number two, that you like a quiet lifestyle, because we went to many of these villages in Sardinia and they're quiet. You're not going to get, you know, bowling alleys and bars. It's a very quiet life, albeit a very inexpensive life. So something to certainly look into in a place like Sardinia. And healthcare in Italy is also socialized, which is, you're going to see that as a common theme in a lot of the European countries. They have over 1,051 hospitals in Italy. And then in Sardinia, they have over 10 hospitals Certainly, they've got 2 or 3 each in their major cities, which are Cagliari and Olbia. The next concern that everybody has is safety, and in that, Italy ranks 31st in safety, which is interesting. They do have a problem in the major cities like Milan and Rome with pickpockets, but overall crime is not a big problem in the country. So they have an incredibly robust police force, as they do in many of these other countries. And the Italian police seem to use the same playbook as the Spanish, in as much as they'd rather be proactive as far as reactive. And we found them to be incredibly friendly. As for government in Italy, Italy is part of the EU, and they have a good relationship with the United States as well. They have a unitary parliamentary republic. They actually have a prime minister and a president, and then a parliament comprised of 2 houses. So a little similar to America, sort of. Having been under fascist rule during World War II, the Italians are fierce about protecting their democracy. So politically, they're very energized, and they're very vocal when it comes to their rights and their democracy. So many of you might wonder why we chose Sardinia. We actually lived in Salerno, Palermo, Milan, Rome, and Florence. And we found that the friendliest Italian people were in Sardinia. And we think that that's because the Italians are just exhausted. They have had a problem with over-tourism. And then on top of that, they're impacted hugely by immigrants coming into the country. And between those 2 things, we think that that has really kind of made them a little, sometimes grouchy. And number 3, we have Dorset, England. And as you can see by the eggometer, you'll pay about $2 more for a dozen eggs in England. And that expense will be consistent with all the groceries that you buy. Sadly enough, England is not an affordable choice for most people. Unfortunately, everything is high: gas, food, and electricity. As for accommodation, you can find reasonable accommodation as long as you're outside of the cities like London, and thus our pick for Dorset. While the accommodation may seem reasonable, it's the heating and electricity that can offset any possible savings you might get in getting decent accommodation. Again, the healthcare system in England is socialized with over 1,148 hospitals. And then each community, town, village, will have its own healthcare infrastructure. And it's usually, if it's not a full-fledged hospital, it'll be an area where people can go for urgent or patient care easily. Unfortunately, despite having socialized medicine, many British people still pay for private health insurance. Their system is good, albeit a little bit broken, meaning that a lot of times if you have, let's say, a hip operation that you need, you might be on a fairly long waiting list. That waiting list could go for a month or even a year. So England comes in 35th as far as safest country. Again, they don't have guns there, they don't allow guns, so that helps a lot in safety. And we have found that the English countryside is incredibly safe. England is used to be part of the EU, and they decided that they wanted to separate from the EU several years ago, and that was what they called the Brexit. So now England has their own money and their own laws and everything like that. They're not part of the EU. They are still huge allies with the United States. So probably one of our strongest allies in the world is going to be England. The challenge with England is that they didn't recover well from COVID. They're still struggling. Their economy is still struggling. And so that is noticeable, at least it was to us whenever we've gone there. England's governmental system, as you may know, has got a monarch. So they still have the king, but he doesn't actually rule. They have a prime minister and a parliament, and they actually rule the country, and the king is more doing philanthropic things of that nature. Currently, England has a lot of problems. If you move to the countryside, you can shield yourself from a lot of the problems. However, some of the issues you can't hide from, and so there's inflation everywhere you go there. Our desire to be in England comes more from the fact that we actually lived there before, and we love the British people. We love their resilience, we love their humor, and we know that that has gotten them through some really hard times. And we believe that hopefully that humor and resilience will get them through what they're going through right now, which is a little bit of a challenge. So number 2, here we are at Nice, France. And as you can see by the eggometer, eggs in France are 20 cents less a dozen. And what's interesting about that is that groceries are less in France, and they're very good quality as well. It's funny how many misconceptions there are in the world, but so many people have said, well, isn't France expensive, and isn't the south of France expensive? And quite frankly, we were really surprised to find that out of all the places that we've been, including Mexico, France and the south of France is one of the less expensive places that we actually lived in. In fact, after staying in over 26 different Airbnbs around the world in the last 3 years, our accommodation in France was actually some of the most affordable that we found. And if you're willing to live out in the countryside, you can get even more affordable places, and that's to either rent or buy. France actually has a lot of real estate, and people have been getting homes for very decent prices. So France, like many of the other European countries, has socialized medicine. You can get healthcare services if you're not a resident at very fair prices. They have over 2,987 hospitals, 7 of which are in Nice. So we felt very safe the whole time we were there if we were in need of any kind of hospitalization. Safety, France is 21st on the chart of the world's safest countries. Again, the police are everywhere. Again, they have gun control, they don't have guns. We found that we actually were in Nice when they had 3 really big events. One of them was the Rugby World Cup, so you literally had people from all over the world coming there. The other one was the worldwide Ironman, so again, thousands of people for that. And lastly, they have Mardi Gras every year, and we were there for their Mardi Gras. What was interesting to me is what a great job the French police did at setting up to be proactive so that problems didn't happen when all of the events were going on. And they sometimes set up a month in advance, because we were living there for a long time, so we would watch them as they went through their different grades of setting up for these different events. Due to that, we did not experience even one issue. So France is part of the EU, and again, as such, has a good relationship with the United States. Their government is semi-presidential republic, which means they have a prime minister who presides over 18 administrative regions, and then they also have a president. So it's a little bit different system. You may or may not know, France was invaded during World War II by the Nazi regime. And because of that, they are very concerned about anything that even smacks of fascism or anything of that nature. The French are tough, and they lived through that and regained their democracy, but because of that, they will not put up with people in any way taking away any of their rights. So I would say probably some of the most determined people, courageous people that I've seen, really, are the French. They're amazing. Lastly, we have our number 1 pick, which is Mexico City, Mexico. And when you look at the eggometer, you can see that a dozen eggs is coming in at $1.17 less than it would be in the United States. And this is consistent, again, with groceries and so forth. We find that groceries in Mexico overall are less expensive. Very inexpensive fresh vegetables and fruit is inexpensive and outstanding quality. because they grow mostly everything here in the country. So it's not having to be transported very far. And they very much are into organic growing as well. So again, the quality of what we've gotten in that regard has been excellent and very affordable. The affordability as far as food goes is everywhere here in Mexico. And by that I mean that you can literally live off of $5 a day to eat. You can certainly go to any of the taco trucks, which are literally everywhere, and they are serving really good quality food. You can get a couple of tacos for under $1. So they do have inflation here. However, you can still find reasonable accommodation. You are going to need to research, but certainly there's a huge spectrum. You know, depending on where you want to live and in what neighborhood and so forth, you can absolutely find things that are a lot less expensive than the United States. What we really like about Mexico City is the diversity and the breadth of activities. There's so much to see and do here that it would be pretty difficult to ever really get bored of the place. You'd have to really work out. I think our top reason for wanting to live in Mexico City is the people. These people here are so lovely. And this is definitely consistent throughout Mexico. And please look at some of our other videos on Mexico because we've done a slew. But everywhere we have been in Mexico, the people are so kind. And we have found in the 20 years that we've been coming to Mexico, the progress has been unbelievable. They are now definitely turning into one of the best economies in the world. So they've got a country that can literally stand on its own if it needed to. They have a great police force, and they do have a military, but they're not involved in any wars. And that makes a big difference because all of the money that would be spent on wars is spent on the infrastructure inside the country. And they are now one of the global leaders in green energy, which is interesting. So there's a lot of positives to Mexico. Okay, so their healthcare is a combination of public, private, and then employee funded. Over 3,600 hospitals in the country, and here in Mexico City, they have at least 20. It's probably more than that. The standard being incredibly high. If you do have to pay for medical, I've already done this on another video, but I'll explain it again. It's literally either half or 75% less than what this similar procedure would cost in the United States. So here's one thing that people need to consider. When you talk about world rankings on safety, Mexico is ranked 128th. And they don't allow guns here, but as many of you have probably heard in the press, they have the cartels, and the cartels do have guns. With that said, we have now either lived in Mexico or been in Mexico for the past 20 years, and we have yet to come into contact with any nefarious people or situations. I would say that you'd have to kind of put yourself in some of those situations to be in contact with people that have those kind of weapons. The police force is enormous, and the military is enormous, and they are in every town and city watching everything to keep people safe. So I can honestly say I feel safer here than I did when I was living in Marina del Rey, California, because the police presence and the military presence is amazing. So we have not experienced any problems at all. Despite the ranking for the country, we feel incredibly safe, especially in this particular city. We feel very, very safe all the time. Currently, the government is a federal republic with 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. And just recently, the people of the country voted in a new president who happens to be the first woman president of Mexico. And you know, what we see is that Mexico is a country on the rise. And because it has so many natural resources, probably their best natural resource being their people. And so we really like the feeling of positivity here. We like the fact that the people are very friendly, and we like the fact that currently this country is not at war with anybody, which is a really nice thing. So that brings us to the end of our list. I'm hoping that gave you a ton more information as to why we chose those 5 places. Also their infrastructure, their security, their affordability. I really appreciate all the comments people have made on the last video, and it would be great if you do the same thing, and please comment below. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. And if you've enjoyed the video, I know it sounds cliche, but a thumbs up really does help, as well as, or even better yet, subscribe. We do a new video every week. Thanks again. Cheers for now.